Epilogue by Sherlock Holmes. Undeniably, the case of the Black Barouche, as Enola insists on calling it, presented unique points of interest, and I would not have missed it for the world. But just as undeniable was my strong sentiment of relief when we got back to London, and my fearless sister once again went her own feckless way. From the moment we rescued Lady Felicity until several weeks afterwards, Enola remained mostly preoccupied with fussing over Tish and Flossie, blessedly aiming her interfering proboscis in their direction rather than mine. She ordered quantities of flowers and baskets of food delivered to Tish's lodging. She hired a maid of all work and a cook for them. She commissioned a seamstress to outfit Flossie in necessaries. She not only loaned Tish a wig, but purchased a new blonde one for her. And the moment the Glover sisters felt strong enough, she began to take them shopping. And again, shopping, almost every day. And more and further shopping, for frocks, suits, coats, and cloaks, boots, slippers, parasols, reticules, gloves, and hats, with all the trinkets and trimmings. I have no very clear idea what furbelows are, but I'm quite sure the three of them obtained some. As I decidedly declined to exhibit any interest in their purchases, they invited Tewkesbury to London for a day to admire their new wardrobes. Thus was I left largely in peace, for I saw Enola only in regard to business. This being the unpleasant business of obtaining funds for Lady Felicity from Lord Cadogan Burr-Rudcliffe II, Earl of Dunhenge. I took this matter upon myself, intending to keep my sister innocent of it. In her youthful, swashbuckling way, Enola was determined to blackmail Lord Cadogan Burr-Rudcliffe II to the utmost. But even though the cad of all cads quite deserved punishment, I would not be a party to extortion. I had explained this to Enola, and she vehemently disagreed. But one can hardly expect a woman, even a most intelligent one, to comprehend a gentleman's code of honor. Therefore, I made sure to act promptly, before Enola might make mischief. Accompanied by my faithful Watson and his trusty service revolver, I traveled back to Dunhenge Hall only a day and a half after we had quitted it. And there we arrived to find his cadship having the howling fantods. Even as his mournful butler blocked our entry, I could hear the Earl within ranting. "Take them down and burn them, every one of them! Burn them, I say!" Most interesting. I quite wanted to see what exactly was being cremated this time. Telling the butler, "We are here on the business of Her Majesty Queen Victoria," I shoved past him with Watson by my side, and making our way towards the hubbub the misfortunate Earl was creating. We found that a moral aristocrat in the parlor, stamping to death something on the carpet, as if it were a deadly viper. However, I saw as we walked in, it was just a framed picture, a dainty watercolor of flowers. Rudcliffe actually smashed the glass and splintered the frame before he seized the painting itself and cast it into the hearth fire. "Ah," I said, comprehending, "you destroy the artwork of Lady Felicity when you can no longer destroy Lady Felicity herself." Swinging around, his head menacing like that of a bull about to charge, he bellowed, "Who might you be?" "I might be, and am, Sherlock Holmes, retained on your wife's behalf." He let out an oath that scattered the nearby servants. They dropped their sacrificial paintings as they ran. Watson kindly bolted the doors behind them, so that the ignoble nobleman and I might not be troubled by their return. Then my good Watson stationed himself at the main entry and stood guard with his pistol in hand. "Might we sit down?" I asked Lord Cadogan politely. "We need to arrange for your continued financial support of your wife, in the form of a settlement you will pay her." "I will not." "Oh, you will," I told him earnestly, "or else stand in the dock on charges of falsifying medical signatures on admittance papers." The conversation rather deteriorated thereafter. Indeed, so threatening did he become that I pulled out my life-preserver, a handy pocket truncheon made of rope and weighted wood, and showed it to him. Phlegmatically, Watson remained at his post by the door. He knew, as I did, that most bullies are cowards, and sure enough, his cadship quickly resorted to bluster. "You can't prove it about the signatures." "He most certainly can," retorted my good Watson from across the room, "or at least one of them. I am Dr. Watson." The Earl recoiled as if from a physical blow, eyes darting in search of escape. "Brindle!" he howled for his butler. "Bring footman!" I rather lost patience. "Sit down," I ordered Cadogan, directing him with uplifted truncheon towards a chair at the parlor table. "If you attempt to eject us, we will simply return with legal authorities. Do you want that?" The Earl did not answer, but he sat. Behind me, I heard a murmur of voices as Watson directed Brindle to fetch his master's stationery, pen, ink, blotting paper, etc. I told Cadogan Burr Rudcliffe II, "You will now write a complete confession. Start with the fate of your first wife, Enola Haskell." He balked, of course, and I had to prompt him each step of the way. He had falsified commitment papers, locked up his wife in a lunatic asylum, told her family she was dead, faked her cremation. He penned his account so bold and large that I could read it from where I stood. I had him continue to pen much the same shameful account of his treatment of Felicity Glover. Finally, I had him sign and date this document and turn it over to me. Watson then read it and witnessed it. I seated myself at the parlor table opposite the glowering Earl. "Now," I told him, "we need to arrange payment." "Blackmailer!" he exploded at me. "I am a gentleman," I told him severely. "Never would I stoop to blackmail. And you have proved that you are not a gentleman whatsoever at all. Only for that reason do I require this surety." I patted the pocket wherein I held his confession. "If you were a gentleman, this would be merely a gentleman's agreement, not extortion in any way. As it is, think what you like. Nevertheless, you are to place into a bank account for your wife each month the same amount of money that you were paying to have her put away. No less, no more." I had inquired regarding the sum, which was quite enough for Flossie to support herself in a modest way. It was probably more than Tish made with her typewriter. His cadship brightened, reaching almost eagerly for pen and paper, as he had expected me to insist on far worse. Behind me, a heightened female voice proclaimed, "Great parlous piles of pig dung!" I stiffened. No, it couldn't be. But I saw plainly as I rose and turned it was. Enola stood there, imperiously hatted and dressed in her City of London best. Next to her, just as formidably arrayed, stood an older woman I did not know. Behind them, near the door, I glimpsed Watson, sheep-faced, not looking at me. And Enola glared straight past me, skewering the Earl of Dunhenge with her stare. "Balderdash, poppycock!" she expanded. "You cad!" She ordered Caddy. "Give Flossie at least 3 times that amount per month, or Dame Haskell and I will tell the whole world what you did to your wives, not only Felicity, but also Mizella." Much as I was taken aback by Enola's appearance on the scene, I retained sufficient presence of mind to pull my attention away from her, turn, and check on the Earl lest he throw something. But I need not have concerned myself. All the fight seemed to have gone out of him. He sat like a great gawking gudgeon, fixated on the 2 females as if he saw an invading army. But his apprehensions seemed focused mainly upon Dame Haskell, who had not said a word. Having given her my usual quick assessment, I saw only a short and rather shapeless old woman with quite a countrified face, resembling a withered apple. Yet somehow, in their redoubtable hats, she and Enola seemed to loom like veritable Irenes, fates, furies. Up until that moment, I had regarded women's elaborate headgear as merely silly at best and ridiculous at worst. But in that shadowy moment at Dunhenge Hall, I began to perceive it differently. Dame Haskell tilted her head, and her imposing hat, just a threatening trifle, towards the Earl of Dunhenge, and ordered, "Do it." Instantly, he took up his pen, and within a few minutes, with surprising celerity, the necessary papers were signed, and the first deposit of Felicity's much-increased stipend turned over to me. "Now," I told him, "I require a written promise that you will make no attempt ever to contact or interfere in any way with your wife or her sister, Letitia Glover." "Now see here," he began to bluster. Enola silenced him. "Remember how Tish had you screaming and on the run in your own dining room?" she told him with unholy glee. "I would think you'd be glad to stay as far away as possible from both of the Glover sisters." He glowered and sulked, but he wrote the necessary document. With our business finally concluded, although no handshakes were exchanged, Watson and I saw ourselves out, each of us escorting one of the ladies. Enola took my arm, but once the doors of Dunhenge Hall had closed behind us, I had no idea what to say to her. Descending the steps, I remained silent. Displeased by her being there, by her interference, I admit it. However, the first moving object that caught my eye drove all such thoughts from my mind. It was an all too familiar prancing yellow horse hitched to Dame Haskell's awaiting brougham. "Please tell me that is not Jezebel," I exclaimed. "It's not. It's Jezebel's twin sister, Jasmine." Parting from me with a grin I could not begin to decipher, Enola rode away with Dame Haskell, their mild-mannered mare trotting sweetly and sedatedly out of sight. Watson stood by my side. "Definitely not Jezebel," he remarked. "It is the merest coincidence, surely, that two mares should look so much alike." He gave me his most guileless smile, and although I lifted my eyebrows in return, I no longer felt any inclination to reproach him for letting Enola into Dunhenge Hall. I knew quite well how persuasive she could be when she wanted her own way. "Indeed, I find myself quite weary of anything having to do with twins," I remarked. "Let us go, shall we?" Once back to London, I took him out to dine, and we drank a toast to a job well done. Flossie very sensibly used some of her funds to buy tinware and japan it, that is to say, paint flowers and such on it with lacquer, decoratively, coating the metal so that it would not corrode. And with her artistic flair, she rendered her wares markedly superior to most. Eventually, she took a stall in Covent Garden, where she sells the tins and trays and candle shades and so forth at a goodly profit, with great success, as I am frequently reminded by Enola, who at least once a week purchases from her a very pretty flower pot, match holder, or equally useless item, then brings it to my flat, and if she finds me at home, gives it to me. Indeed, on one pretext or another, my sister finds her way often to my flat, where she is quite welcome. However, she has not yet managed to involve herself in another case of mine, nor do I intend that she should, although, undoubtedly, somehow she will.